My wife told me that our 3-year-old son was buried. A day later, I found out the horrible truth. I really thought Natalie and I had this whole co-parenting thing figured out. It wasn't easy, of course. Divorce never is, but somehow we made it work. Over time, we settled into a pattern. We had a rhythm that made the whole situation feel less heavy. We shared calendars to stay on top of appointments and schedules. We talked about school pickups and drop-offs. We split holidays in a way that seemed fair to both of us. It wasn't perfect, but it was manageable. We weren't best friends, not even close, but we were respectful. We kept things civil even when we disagreed. We both understood what mattered most, and that was Ava. From the beginning, we made a promise that no matter what happened between us, she would always come first. That was the rule we lived by. And for a while, I believed we were doing a good job. Then everything fell apart in a single night. The phone call came late. Far too late for anything normal. The kind of hour where your heart drops the moment the screen lights up. I sat on the edge of my bed, already uneasy, phone in hand. I wasn't sure what to say, and I kept going over different ways to start the conversation, but none of them felt right. My hands were shaking. My chest was tight. When she answered, I could tell she'd been asleep. Her voice was low and tired. I froze, just for a second. Then the words left my mouth, even though I could barely believe I was saying them. I told her it was about Ava. That moment shattered everything. Natalie and I had been together for 5 years before we ended things. Looking back, I think we both saw it coming. Even when we didn't say it, we knew. We met young, probably too young. At first, it felt like we had everything, but eventually, real life caught up to us. The spark faded. The pressure of work, parenting, and everything in between started to pull us apart. There wasn't a dramatic ending. No huge argument or betrayal. Just a slow, quiet drift. A mutual understanding that whatever we once had was gone. After the split, our lives went in different directions. We lived in different states, different environments, surrounded by different people. The only real connection left between us was Oliver, our 3-year-old son. He became my entire world. I only got to see him during holidays, and while I was grateful for any time at all, it was never enough. I missed the small things. His mornings, his firsts, the in-between moments that pictures and updates just couldn't capture. Still, I refused to make things worse. I didn't want to drag our situation through a courtroom. Natalie and I agreed we would never turn it into a fight. Oliver didn't deserve that. He didn't need to grow up in a world where his parents hated each other. So we stayed civil. We stayed careful. Every night, Natalie would call me so I could say goodnight to him. No matter what else was happening, she never missed a night. It became a part of my routine, something I counted on. Seeing his face, even through a screen, brought a kind of peace I couldn't find anywhere else. He would smile, wave at the camera, and say, "Night, Daddy," in his small voice before turning away to go to bed. Those moments made things feel a little less broken until they stopped. Everything was fine, or at least it felt that way. Natalie and I had found our rhythm. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. We were managing. We stayed in our lanes, kept the peace, and made sure Oliver always came first. Then came the call that shattered everything. I answered, expecting one of her usual check-ins. But the moment I heard her voice, I knew something was terribly wrong. She wasn't calm. She wasn't collected. She was crying. No, she was screaming. She yelled my name through the phone. I could barely recognize her voice. There was panic in it and pain. "Greg, our son's gone." I froze where I stood. The words didn't register at first. "What do you mean, gone?" I asked, my voice low, confused. "Oliver is dead," she screamed, the words cutting straight through me. Everything stopped. My brain couldn't catch up. I couldn't understand what she was saying. "What? What are you talking about? How?" She was sobbing so hard I could barely make out what she was saying. Her voice broke with every word. He's just gone. Oh my God, Greg." I sank to the floor. My legs gave out under me. I felt the weight of her words pressing down, crushing me. No, this couldn't be real. Not Oliver, not my son. "I'll be there. I'm coming right now," I said, forcing myself up, grabbing for my keys, my voice trembling. But then she said something that stopped me cold. "No," she choked out. "Don't. We've already had the ceremony. He's been buried." I stood there in silence, barely breathing. "Buried?" I whispered, like the word itself was too heavy to say. Out loud. I didn't know what to do. I hung up. My hand dropped to my side, the phone still in it. I stared at the screen, not even seeing it. Questions were spinning through my head, too fast, too loud to ignore. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't make sense of any of it. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I pressed the call button. I had to hear her voice again. I needed answers. The phone rang once, then twice. Finally, she picked up. Her voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "Greg, what the hell, Natalie?" The words came out hard. My voice cracked. "Why, didn't you tell me anything? If something happened to Oliver, if he was sick or hurt, you should have called me." There was a pause. Then she stammered, her breath catching. I couldn't." "You couldn't?" I repeated, my voice rising. I stood up and started pacing the room, my chest tight. "I'm his father, Natalie. I should have been there. I should have known. What even happened? Yesterday he was fine. It all happened so fast," she said, sobbing. Her words blurred together. "I didn't know how to what, Natalie? How to tell me our son is dead?" My voice cracked again, the pain and the anger mixing, choking me. "Do you even understand what that feels like? To find out like this?" "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't want to do this over the phone." But she already had. I tried to keep my voice steady, even though it felt like my chest was on fire. "Then when were you going to tell me?" I asked. There was silence on the other end of the line, and then once again she said it, those same words, like they were supposed to make everything okay. "I'm sorry." Her voice cracked as she spoke, full of guilt and grief, but it didn't help, not this time. "Sorry's not enough, Natalie," I said. My teeth clenched as I bit the inside of my cheek, trying to hold back the scream rising in my throat. The pain, the anger, it was building too fast to control. I couldn't understand how she had kept something so big from me. If what she said was true, if Oliver was really gone, how had I not heard it from someone? "Why didn't anyone else call me?" I asked, my voice low and shaky. Even if Natalie had been too deep in grief, too overwhelmed to think clearly, there were other people, her parents, her friends. Someone could have picked up the phone. Someone should have told me. Even Mike, her new husband. As much as I hated, that man hated the way he tried to slide into the space I once filled, he should have called me. He should have known how much I deserved to be there. I had spent the night in a daze. Grief had wrapped itself around me like a storm cloud that wouldn't lift. I barely slept. The next morning, I forced myself to pack a bag. I had no plan. I didn't care how awkward or tense it would be. I just needed to be there. I needed to see where they had buried my son. While I was zipping up my suitcase, the phone rang. I looked down at the screen. It was Mike. My jaw tightened as I stared at his name. I didn't want to talk to him. Not now, not ever. But something told me to answer. "Mike," I said shortly, one hand still holding the suitcase. "I'm on my way. I'll be there by tonight." He didn't respond right away. When he did speak, his tone stopped me in my tracks. "Wait, Greg," he said softly. His voice didn't sound like it usually did. There was hesitation in it, a kind of nervous energy that made me freeze mid-step. Something was wrong. "What is it?" I asked, my heart pounding as I waited for him to explain. There was a pause, and then when he finally spoke, the words that came out didn't make any sense. "Natalie, she's lost her mind, man. She made all of this up. Oliver's alive." I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. "What?" I whispered. The room spun around me. "Oliver's alive," Mike said again, this time a little clearer, but still with disbelief in his voice. "Natalie made it all up. He's fine. He's with her parents right now." For several long seconds, I couldn't speak. My brain couldn't keep up with what I was hearing. Alive. My son was alive. I had spent the entire night mourning him, imagining a world without him. I had pictured a grave, a small coffin, the ache of never hearing his voice again. And now, I was being told it was all a lie. She lied? I asked. The words barely made it out of my mouth. "Yes," Mike said, sounding exhausted. "She's been talking for a while about how she didn't want you in her life anymore. I didn't think she'd ever go this far, but she let it slip. She thought if you believed Oliver was dead, you'd stop trying. You'd stay away for good." I stood there in complete silence, staring at the floor, feeling a storm of emotions crash over me all at once. Anger, confusion, relief, shock. I didn't know which one to hold on to. I didn't even know what to feel first. Anger swelled in, my chest like a fire I couldn't put out. My hands were clenched into fists at my sides, and I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. How could she do this? How could she lie to me? More importantly, how could she do this to Oliver? "Greg, I know this is a lot," Mike said gently, his voice coming through the phone like an echo I could barely register. But I couldn't keep this from you. She's been unraveling for a while. I called you as soon as I found out. I didn't say anything right away. I couldn't. My mind was spinning, trying to sort through the chaos. My son was alive. My little boy, who I had already mourned, already pictured gone, was still here, breathing, laughing somewhere. But Natalie, the woman I had once loved and trusted to raise him with me, had made me believe he was dead. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of poor judgment. This was a lie so cruel and deliberate I could barely wrap my head around it. Without another word, I shut off the call. My fingers moved automatically. I finished packing my things, grabbed my wallet, and booked the next flight out. I didn't care about the cost or the timing. I had to get there. I had to see Oliver with my own eyes. The flight felt endless. Every second that passed made my anger boil hotter. I sat rigid in my seat, staring blankly ahead, running every detail over and over in my mind. I tried to stay calm, but all I could feel was betrayal. The woman I had once shared a life with had stolen something from me, something I could never get back. Those hours I spent grieving Oliver, believing he was gone, were hours I'd never forget. By the time I landed, I was running on adrenaline alone. I didn't even stop for a breath. I went straight to Natalie's house. My chest was tight, my thoughts sharp and heavy. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but I knew I had to confront her. Before I could even knock, the front door opened. She was already there, standing in the doorway, her eyes swollen and red, her face wet with tears that hadn't stopped. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of her own actions was crushing her. "Greg," she whispered, her voice cracking. She stepped aside, leaving the door open. I walked past her without saying a word, dropping my bag in the hallway. I didn't care about pleasantries. I didn't care about civility. I turned to her, my voice low and trembling. "How could you do that to me?" She wiped her face with shaking hands. Her lips quivered as she tried to answer. I thought you'd take Oliver from me." I blinked, stunned. "What?" She looked down at the floor, her shoulders trembling. I'm pregnant with another child," she said quietly. "I was scared. I thought if you found out, you'd try to take Oliver, that you'd say he was better off with you because I'd be too busy here, that he shouldn't have to share his home or my attention." I stared at her, trying to make sense of it all. "That's what you thought? That I'd just take him away from you?" She nodded slowly, her breathing shaky. "I panicked, Greg. I didn't know what else to do." The rage inside me flared again, hot and sharp like a blade in my chest. "So you faked our son's death?" I said, my voice rising but still broken with disbelief. "You told me he was gone. You made me believe he was in the ground. You buried him in my mind." She sobbed quietly, still not looking at me. Her guilt hung in the air between us like smoke. I was shaking now, every muscle in my body on edge. I could barely contain the storm inside me. "This isn't about your new baby," I said, my voice cold. "And it's not about what you thought I might do. This is about Oliver," I said, my voice firmer now, every word heavy with the truth I needed her to understand. "And you almost ripped him away from me. Forever." Natalie broke down again, tears spilling freely as she sank into the nearest chair. Her sobs filled the room, raw and broken, and for a moment I could see just how deeply shaken she was by what she had done. She wrapped her arms around herself and rocked slightly, cradling her belly every few minutes like a shield. "Look, Natalie," I said more softly, trying to keep myself calm even though my heart was still pounding. I became aware of movement in the doorway. Mike had entered the room quietly and stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching us. He didn't say anything, but his presence was steady, grounding. "This changes things," I continued, locking eyes with Natalie. "But it doesn't excuse what you did. You should have trusted me. That's what this all comes down to. Trust. If you had just talked to me, told me how you were feeling, we could have figured something out." She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, and I could see regret written all over it. "I would never have taken Oliver from you," I added, my voice heavy with emotion. "That's not who I am. He needs both of us. He always has. But Natalie, I'm angry, and I'm hurt. I spent hours thinking my son was dead. Do you even know what that did to me?" Natalie couldn't answer. She kept holding her stomach, like she was trying to keep herself together. Then suddenly, I heard the sound that shattered the grief in the room, a patter of little feet running across the hallway floor. Fast, light, full of life. "Daddy!" a small voice screamed. I turned just in time to see Oliver flying around the corner. He ran straight into my arms, throwing himself at me with all the strength his tiny body could manage. I dropped to my knees and caught him, holding him tightly. Pressing my face into his hair, I refused to let go. My arms locked around him like I could protect him from everything, past, present, and future. I couldn't believe it. My son was here, alive, warm, real. I held him like I'd never held anyone before. Eventually, I pulled back just enough to look at Natalie again. Her eyes were on us. She was still crying, but now there was something else in her face. Relief, maybe. Or guilt, or both. I took a deep breath. "I'm not here to take Oliver from you," I said, steady but firm. "But if anything like this ever happens again, if you ever lie to me about something this serious, I'll have no choice but to take legal action." I need to protect my son, and I need to protect myself. She nodded slowly, barely able to speak through her tears. I hoped she understood. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I just couldn't go through something like that again. In my heart, I think I understood the pain Natalie must have felt. The fear of losing her child, the confusion, the uncertainty. But what she did still didn't make sense. If she had just come to me, I would have listened. I would have told her how happy I was for her, that I was glad Oliver would have a little sibling, that we could have made it work. Since then, I've insisted that she and I go to counseling. We need help, real help, to work through the damage caused by the divorce and everything that followed. There are still so many layers to our pain, and we can't just ignore them anymore. Mike, for all the bitterness I once felt toward him, has been a steady presence. I'm grateful in a way that if someone else had to be a stepfather to Oliver, it was the man who picked up the phone and told me the truth. That mattered. That counted for something. Back home, once the dust had settled, I sat alone with my thoughts. The distance between Oliver and me, it had always hurt, but after everything that happened, it was unbearable. I couldn't let that be our reality any longer. I opened my laptop and started scrolling through job listings, city after city, opportunity after opportunity. My fingers moved quickly, determined. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. I had to be closer to my son, and soon. I looked out the window, then back to the screen. Next time, Natalie, I muttered to myself, voice low. I won't be so far away.